is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today I have the Detroit Lions season preview for y'all, so let's hop into it. And last year, they finished with a 9-8 record, which was good enough for second in the NFC North, but they missed the playoffs. And I'm going to be honest, they shocked me with this record. I think they shocked a lot of people with how well they performed, especially down the stretch last year. I know they were in playoff contention all the way through the end of the season, and they sadly just missed out on it. But I do think they have a good chance to make it to the postseason this year, and I have very high hopes for Detroit for this upcoming season. So some of the notable signings that they did to help bolster this team and hopefully take them to the next step and make the playoffs for the first time in what seems like forever. They brought in running back David Montgomery to replace some of the running backs that they've lost. I'll get into that in a little bit. They brought in cornerback Cameron Sutton, center Graham Glasgow. They also got safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So good veteran guys to help bolster this team. They also made a trade for kicker Riley Patterson. They also re-signed defensive tackle Isaiah Buggs, defensive end John Kaminsky, middle linebacker Alex Anzalone. So a lot of defensive re-signings to help bolster that defense. And they did lose a decent amount of players, but they lost players that they replaced fairly well. They lost running back Jamal Williams, who, like I said, they signed running back David Montgomery. So that pretty much cancels out. They traded running back DeAndre Swift, but they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, which I will also get into that a little bit later. They lost wide receiver DJ Chark, defensive back Deshaun Elliott, cornerback Mike Hughes, cornerback Amon-Ra, and they didn't have any major staff changes, so no new schemes, no new information is getting thrown at these players. They have the same playbook, the same whole ordeal, so they don't have to learn anything new. They can just build upon what they already know and improve what they already do good. And they had a really good draft class this year. When I did my NFL draft class tier list, I had Detroit ranked near the top. Running back Jahmyr Gibbs with their first round pick, which at first this pick did surprise me because I felt like Bijan Robinson was the only running back going to go in round one. And when they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, I was kind of like taken back at first because I thought there was a lot of better players available. But with them losing a few running backs, I see why this pick makes a lot of sense for the team. They then got linebacker Jack Campbell, one of the best linebackers in last year's or this year's draft class. Yeah, this past draft class, but it was also, you know what I mean. Tight end Sam Laporta, one of the better tight ends in this draft. Got safety Brian Branch, who did fall a little bit in the draft, but was still a really good pick to help improve this defense. They got quarterback Hendon Hooker, which, he can sit behind Jared Goff right now. He can learn the ropes and eventually take over and be Detroit's quarterback of the future. So they hit on a lot of their first picks. Defensive tackle Broderick Martin, offensive tackle Kobe Sorsdale, wide receiver Anton Green. So some of those guys towards the end were more for depth and for future's sake, but they hit on a lot of these draft picks who can definitely come in and make an impact right away. Gibbs will probably be their running back one to start the season. We'll see how he performs in the preseason, if he can beat out David Montgomery, but either way, it'll be a nice 1-2 punch, a nice complementary duo in Detroit's backfield. Linebacker Jack Campbell has a real chance to make the starting rotation, and if he is a depth guy and gets thrown into a starting spot, I don't think it's the end of the world for Detroit. Sam Laporta, I think, has a chance to be a really good tight end in this league. Safety Brian Branch, another one who can probably contribute a lot on special teams right out the gate. But either way, a really solid draft class to help improve this team. So now that we got all their transactions and stuff out of the way, let's move over to their schedule and my record prediction for the Detroit Lions. All right, now I apologize for the fuzziness of the schedule. So hopefully it looks a little bit better when you're watching this video. But yeah, I apologize. But anyway, in week one, they have the Kansas City Chiefs. So one of their toughest tasks of the season in week one is against Kansas City. And as much as I want to put a green W right here, I'm going to have to say it's a loss. This game, I feel like it really could go either way, depending on how stuff plays out. But I do have high hopes for this team. But in week one, I do think they lose to the Chiefs. In week two, another decent game in the Seattle Seahawks, who I think are going to also be a pretty decent team. But I do think Detroit gets the better of them, and they get their first win of the season in week two, which carries over well into week three, where they play the Atlanta Falcons, where I feel they can easily win that game. Maybe it's a little close for comfort, but I do think Detroit, if they play well, they can win this game. Then they have their first of two meetings against the Green Bay Packers, and I'm low on the Packers this season. I'm high on Detroit this season. I know I've already stated that in this video, but I think Detroit has a good chance to sweep the Packers this year. So I'm going to put a green W here in week 4 and one down here in week 12, sweeping the Packers for Detroit. Then they have the Carolina Panthers, in week 5. Panthers, Bryce Young, rookie quarterback. I think there's going to be growing pains for that team. So Detroit also gets the better of them. They also win in week 6 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I'm pretty low on as well. So after losing in week 1, they rattle off 5 straight wins. And that 5-game win streak sadly does come to an end in week 7 when the team travels to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. So a good stretch. They're still 5-2, really respectable. And then they play the Raiders the week before their bye in week 8, and I do think they can win this game. So I'll put a W right there. So at their week 9 bye, they're sitting pretty with a 6-2 record. But coming out of the bye week, they have the Chargers, and I do think this will probably be an L for the team. And then they have their first of 2 matchups against the Chicago Bears. And with this game being at home, I feel that the Lions could very easily win. I'm not super high on the Bears, and the Bears are one of those teams where it wouldn't surprise me if they were really good, and it also wouldn't surprise me if they are really bad. So with this game being in Detroit, I feel safe giving this game to Detroit, but who knows, maybe if the Bears are really good, this game would be an L. And in case the Bears are really good, I'll say this week 14 matchup down here will be an L for Detroit, but it wouldn't surprise me if this was a win for Detroit as well. And we already talked about the Packers game right here. Moving on to the Saints. The Saints are another one of those teams where how well is Derek Carr going to play for them? But I do think Detroit is a better team than the Saints. So we'll give them a win right here. Then in week 15, they have the Denver Broncos. And are the Broncos going to be the Broncos that we seen last year, who went 5-12 and just were absolutely horrible? Or is Sean Payton going to reinvent this Broncos team to be an AFC powerhouse with all the other AFC powerhouses? I don't know, but for the sake of this being a Detroit Lions video, I'm giving Detroit the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say this is another win for Detroit. Then they go on the road and play Minnesota, which I feel this will be a loss for the team. Minnesota is a really good team. They got one of the best wide receivers, or arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. They got a really respectable quarterback in Kirk Cousins. So this one's not too far out of the reach of being a loss for Detroit. And then they go on and play Dallas in week 17. And this is in Dallas. I do think Detroit is going to be a better team than Dallas, but this really could go either way. But I'm gonna give the win to the Detroit just because I like the Lions more than the Cowboys. It's a little bit biased, but hey, it's my video. I don't care. And then in week 18, they close out against the Minnesota Vikings, and they only have 5 losses this year, so they're sitting pretty. Probably this division is going to come down between Minnesota and Detroit, so this could have huge implications on that. But either way, even if they don't win, I do feel that they're getting a playoff spot, whether it be a division title or a wild card spot. So this game really doesn't matter. I think at this point they've already clinched a spot in my fake scenario. So with this, I feel like they're resting some of their key guys, and they dropped this one to Minnesota. Probably they lost the division in this week 16 matchup, but these last couple weeks don't really matter. They get better seeding. But yeah, so they finish out this year with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 losses. So they go 11-6, which, like I said, in my fake scenario in my head, this is good enough for a playoff spot. Detroit gets back to the playoffs, and who knows, maybe they make a little bit of noise. But yeah, let me know what you think of this 11-6 record for the Lions. I I would love to see Detroit back in the playoffs. I think they could make some noise in the NFC. But yeah, let me know what you think. Do you think they're going to be worse than this? Do you think they're going to be better than this? But yeah, leave your thoughts down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you with another season preview. God bless.